I'm Tracy Sabol. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, a mission of peace. Pope Francis offers wisdom on the war in Ukraine. We have a report from Rome. Race against time. Congress and the White House struggle to reach a settlement on America's debt limit debate. Guarding hearts. South Carolina passes the latest pro-life law amid challenges from opponents. And holy layover. Check out the new chapel inside of the world's most active airport. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on this feast of St. Philip Neri. Our top story tonight, in an exclusive interview with Telemundo News, Pope Francis gave his perspective on the war in Ukraine, where he also offered to help with a peace mission. EWTN News Vatican correspondent Colin Flynn has more.
Good evening, Tracy. Before we bring you the news of Pope Francis's latest TV interview, we have to mention that today the Vatican issued a statement saying that the Pope's appointments had been cancelled due to him suffering from a fever. And as you'll remember, Pope Francis was hospitalized at the end of March because of a lung infection. So we are keeping an eye on that story here in Rome and, of course, praying for a quick recovery. But in other news, Pope Francis gave a 30-minute interview to the Spanish-speaking TV network, which is owned by NBC, Telemundo, yesterday, and it has just been released today. During the course of the interview, they touched on a number of issues, starting with the Pope's health. When asked about how he was feeling, he said overall much better. He noted that he could now walk again and talked about his recovery with his knee. He also spoke about his recent time in hospital for bronchitis, saying that they had caught it just in time. And if it had been only a few more hours, it would have been much more severe. He then spoke about the power of prayer and said that many people didn't realize that prayers can be miraculous. Talking about changes he had made in the Vatican and to the running of the Vatican, the Pope was asked if there was anything else that he wanted to do, to which he answered, quote, "Everything. It's funny, the more you do, the more you realize that you still have so much left to do," end quote. When he was asked about immigrants crossing the southern U.S. border from Mexico into the United States and if he had a message for them, the Pope said it was a serious problem, but then spoke more broadly about immigration. He segued to his recent trip to South Sudan in Africa, saying that those who exploit Africa have no conscience. Speaking about the war in Ukraine, the Pope talked about his meeting with President Zelensky and how the president asked the Pope for, quote, a big favor, and that was to take care of the Ukrainian children who had been taken to Russia. When pushed on whether he thought Russia should hand back captured territories to Ukraine, he said that that was a political issue. On the abuse scandals in the Catholic Church, the Pope was asked if he thought there was a link between priestly celibacy and the abuse of minors. In answering this question, the Pope pointed out that statistically, most abuse happens within the family. Quote, an uncle, a father, a grandfather, and they are all married, the Pope said. Finally, the interviewer asked Pope Francis about abortion. He said to the Pope, I know what the Church teaches on abortion, but he asked him directly if he thought a woman who was raped had the right not to have that child. The Pope responded, saying that the science and biology was clear. It showed that there was life there. And then he asked the interviewer, quote, is it lawful to eliminate a life to solve a problem? Is it lawful to hire a hitman to solve a problem? You're not going to get me to change my mind because it is the truth, end quote. In Rome, Colin Flynn, EWTN News Nightly.
Well, as the start of the Memorial Day weekend arrives, President Joe Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy are straining to strike a budget compromise. Negotiators are narrowing differences on an agreement. All this as the nation's debt ceiling currently stands at $31 trillion and climbing. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
Tracy, good evening to you. Tonight, it appears the White House and lawmakers are trying to lock in details on a 2-year agreement. Now, that agreement would restrain federal spending and lift the legal borrowing limit. Of course, this is all going to take compromise, especially at this late hour. Either that or the U.S. Treasury quickly runs out of money.
On the north lawn of the White House this morning, time running out. The only plan we have is the one that's worked for more than 200 years in this country, which is the United States of America needs to pay all of its bills and pay them on time. And Congress has the ability to do that, and the president is calling on them to act on that as quickly as possible.
The Biden administration also rules out using the 14th Amendment.
So the question was whether the United States would use the 14th Amendment. And I think the president and the secretary have been very clear that that will not solve our problems now. So yes, that is a no.
Meanwhile, South Carolina's new pro-life law banning most abortions around 6 weeks. SBA Pro-Life America tweets what it calls a pro-life victory alert. South Carolina has become the 23rd state to protect babies with a heartbeat. Governor Henry McMaster and pro-life legislators' persistence in passing this protection reflects their compassion, respect for the people's will, and adherence to the science. But now a judge puts a temporary halt on the law, and the White House calls the ban extreme and dangerous. Also, in the race for president, former President Donald Trump releases a video saying polls show he's beating other Republicans.
And polls also show, very importantly, that I'm the only candidate who can beat Joe Biden.
Also today at the White House, celebrating the best college basketball teams in the nation, including the Louisiana State University Tigers women's team.
The final was the most viewed game in the history of women's basketball. More viewers than the NBA playoffs. And folks, we witness history.
Also honored at the White House, the University of Connecticut Huskies men's basketball team for their great season. Meanwhile, tonight, the President and First Lady head to Camp David. And then looking ahead to Monday, Memorial Day, the President and First Lady visit Arlington National Cemetery. Together, they'll participate in a wreath-laying ceremony at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
On Capitol Hill, most lawmakers have gone home for the Memorial Day recess, but the mood is anxious about the debt limit. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy is preaching patience, even though conservatives are not happy about some of the details rumored to be in a deal.
We've only been able to negotiate for the last couple of weeks. We know it's a crunch time. We know it's not easy, but we're going to make sure we're not just trying to get an agreement. We're trying to get something that's worthy of the American people, that changes the trajectory.
Rumors that we may have some sort of a deal in place that would raise the debt limit more than what was called for in Limit, Save, Grow for a whole lot less in return that we need from a policy standpoint, from a fiscal standpoint. And if that were true, that would absolutely collapse the Republican majority for this debt ceiling increase.
But any deal faces headwinds in the Senate. Republican Senator Mike Lee is threatening to slow down passage if a deal does not include substantial reforms. However, that could take days, something negotiators may have to factor into their timeline. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis gave his first major speech since announcing his candidacy for president on Wednesday.
And I don't think you can find a state that's done more in this country in our lifetimes to support education and the greater cause of liberty than we right here in the state of Florida. But I can tell you this, I have only begun to fight. Thank you all.
Governor DeSantis made his remarks at the homeschool convention in Orlando. He highlighted the strength of education in Florida and his resolve to continue fighting for education freedom. The Russian Foreign Ministry has acknowledged the Holy Father's Ukraine peace initiative, but emphasized that the Vatican has not taken any steps towards a trip to Moscow. This comes after Pope Francis appointed Cardinal Matteo Zuppi to lead the peace effort. A church in Canada is destroyed by arsonists. The Archbishop of Gerard McLennan said he is deeply saddened by the loss of St. Bernard Church, but he is grateful that no lives were lost in the fire. 2 men have been charged in connection with that attack and are expected to appear in court next week. Thousands of stolen artifacts have been recovered in Italy. Italian police arrested over 20 suspects implicated in a large operation that involved items stolen from graves and archaeological digs. Authorities say that COVID-19 lockdowns made it easier for the thieves to raid sites such as churches and museums, while police were focused on enforcing the lockdowns. And we are learning about a record-setting climb on Mount Everest. The Nepalese Sherpa guide Kamirita first climbed the world's tallest mountain back in 1994, and now he has done it again, a total of 28 times. Rita reached the summit on Tuesday, beating his own record. He said that he will continue to climb as long as his body allows. Well, we have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including consumer criticism. A popular retail giant faces backlash over controversial clothing and more. And the busiest airport in the world gets a wholly new addition. Thanks for staying with us. Retail giant Target has announced that it is removing some of its LGBT merchandise ahead of Pride Month in June due to what it says was backlash from some customers. Many of the products were created by London-based transgender designer who uses occult and satanic symbols in clothing and products. Here to talk about this and more is Ollie London, social media influencer, spokesperson for the Fairness First PAC, and author of the upcoming book, Gender Madness. Ollie, great to have you back on. I know you've been following this Target story very closely. What more do you know about this clothing designer and the fallout that Target is experiencing from all of this?
Well, yesterday, a Target spokeswoman told Reuters that they are pulling all of the satanic designers' pieces from the Pride collection at Target. If you go on Target's website, they have now removed all of these pieces, and stores are removing them and also moving the Pride sections to less obvious places of the store. So this particular designer has really some bizarre and to be honest, it's very offensive to Christians, some of his art. You know, he has a Ouija board, a picture of Baphomet saying Satan respects pronouns. And these are designs for kids, Tracy. This is not cool. It's mocking Christianity, but it's also promoting Satanism and linking it with transgenderism. So you have to think many of Target's customers in the South, in Texas, Kentucky, are Christian. So you're just mocking your customer base. So I'm glad that they pulled it, but it's not far enough. They need to apologize immediately.
Yeah, it's really shocking. It really is. You know, and Target isn't the only one to feature items specifically designed for Pride Month. Outdoor clothing brand North Face, they also launched a clothing collection featuring rainbow-colored clothing for children, and the spokesperson is a drag queen. Ollie, I want to get your thoughts on all of this, and also, why are so many of these products geared towards children?
I mean, it's just crazy and it's beggars belief. So North Face have now released a Pride collection encouraging people to come out, and they have children's clothing, you know, decorated in the rainbow flag. And it's really a push from so many different brands. So we saw Adidas the other day having biological men modeling women's swimsuits. Of course, Target has the tuck-friendly swim designs for women. And they also have all of these children's items as well, you know, talking about becoming trans, for, you know, basically indoctrinating children. And it's just wrong to do that to children. And all of these companies are pushing this based on the Corporate Equality Index, which is set up by the Human Rights Campaign, which is the largest LGBT lobby group in the US. And they basically go around to companies, they give them a perfect 100 score if they push this on their consumers, and that includes children. But this actually backfired. This actually backfired for Bud Light the other day, because what happened is they had a 100% perfect score with this Corporate Equality Index. And because they didn't defend Dylan Mulvaney, the Human Rights Campaign removed their score and suspended them completely. So it completely backfired. So all of these brands, you know, they need to stop targeting children. They're upsetting a lot of consumers. And, you know, why would they do this to try and appease 0.6% of the population?
You know, Ollie, speaking of children, there's a report out of Canada that 17-year-old Christian student Josh Alexander, whom we've interviewed before on this program, was allegedly assaulted by transgender activists as he was handing out Bibles. And also, apparently, some of those trans activists ripped and burned some of those Bibles. Ollie, what more can you tell us about this? It's so disturbing.
So I spoke to Josh the other day, and he's a real freedom fighter. You know, he goes around peacefully protesting, trying to raise awareness of gender ideology and the harm it is causing on society. And now I spoke to him, and he actually got arrested for handing out Bibles, Tracy. And this isn't the first person. There's been multiple pastors that have protested against drag story hours that have been arrested also in Canada. But this particular incident was shocking because the trans activists assaulted Josh Alexandra. The police did nothing, and then they arrested him for inciting the violence. Not only that, as he was handing out copies of the New Testament, some of the trans activists, they actually burned, stamped on them, and ripped them to shreds while laughing. And we're seeing this time and time again. These activists are really mocking Christianity. And, you know, I wouldn't see them do that to another religion, Tracy. You know, imagine them doing that to the Quran. It's incredibly offensive to Christians to do that, and they should show some common respect, but sadly they don't.
Thank you for doing all that you do. We really appreciate it. God bless you. Up next on EWTN News Nightly, Catholics in Croatia. See how they celebrate Pentecost with prayer and music. Plus, moment of peace. Travelers find a place of prayer inside of a bustling airport. Welcome back. A large Pentecost event called Look Through the Heart is being organized by Laudato TV, the Croatian affiliate of EWTN. In the Croatian capital city of Zagreb, thousands of people are ready to gather once again for an event of prayer and music. The American actor Jim Caviezel, best known for his role as Jesus Christ in Mel Gibson's movie The Passion, will also present his testimony. Joining us now from Zagreb, Croatia, is Luka Radicaj, editor for the foreign program at Laudato TV in Croatia, an EWTN affiliate. Luka, thank you so much for your time. Can you tell us more about this event and also its history?
Well, the event, Look with the Heart, was first held in 2014. 1 year before Laudato TV began its broadcasting. And the reasoning behind it was the idea was to receive feedback from the faithful here in Croatia to see whether they would like us to establish a Catholic TV station with family values. And the event was a success, and 2,000 people attended it, and we were very much pleased with that. And in 2015 we started to broadcast as Laudato TV. This event grew with each year. First 2,000 people, then 6,000, 8,000, and in 2019 we were able to fill this arena with 18,000 faithful Croatians. And just last year we held a concert, Look with the Heart, at Maksimir Stadium here in Zagreb, and it was attended by 55,000 people.
Oh, that is amazing. Luka, can you tell us what's the situation of Catholics in Croatia, in particular among the young people?
Well, we are a small country, but we are predominantly a Catholic country. I would say next to Vatican, Poland, and Italy, we are the foremost Catholic countries in Europe. So you could say that there is a Catholic church nearby in every neighborhood, in every city here in Croatia. That is a blessing. That is absolutely a privilege, but it also comes with its own challenges. So for especially young people, I would say the challenges predominantly is perhaps taking your faith for granted because we have so much opportunity to visit our local churches, and precisely because of that, we need these events like this so we can provide people with, especially young people, with spiritual renewal so they can again focus on what's really important, living the sacramental life, whether it's attending the Mass or visiting the church or go to confession or kneel down in the Eucharistic adoration.
Luka, we are almost out of time, but quickly, I understand that the American actor Jim Caviezel will be present for the event. Can you talk to us about that?
Well, whether we would like to admit it or not, we live in a culture where the testimony of a famous actor or a famous movie star or singer is much more deeply connected with young people than, let's say, a lay person. So it was the idea of our director and chief editor, Ksenia Abramovic, to invite Mr. Caviezel here to give his testimony, how his life changed after he filmed the movie, after he played Jesus in the movie Passion of the Christ. So hopefully tomorrow evening he will give his talk about his faith and witness his faith before 18,000 faithful Catholics here.
Well, Luca, that sounds incredible. And thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. We really appreciate it. God bless you.
Thank you for having me. God bless you.
And finally, if you're planning to travel this Memorial Day weekend, you are not alone. According to AAA, an estimated 42.3 million people will travel 50 miles or more this weekend, with nearly 3.4 million people taking to the skies. And chances are many will be passing through Atlanta, the world's most active airport, where the faithful can now spend time in the true presence of Christ.
We saw 110 million passengers come through here in 1 year alone, the busiest airports in the history of aviation.
Andrew Gobil is Communications Director for Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. He says at 4,700 square acres, the airport is relatively small compared to others, but incredibly busy.
We have 7 concourses where we have travelers from across the world coming on in. We've got nearly 200 gates. So we've got passengers as you're walking through who could be flying in from Charlotte or who could be flying in from Tokyo.
And no matter where they come from or where they're going, there is a place where they can all go and find a moment of peace. Here at one of the airport's many interfaith chapels.
Each one of our chapels kind of has its own unique personality because of where they're located. You know, this one here in the International, has a lot of our Catholic brothers and sisters that are traveling international that are through here.
Blair Walker, Executive Director of the Atlanta Interfaith Airport Chaplaincy, says that's because this particular chapel, located in the International Terminal at Hartsfield-Jackson, has something special that the others don't, an adoration chapel. Father Kevin Peak helped to put it in motion.
It all started with choosing the tabernacle. So I took over here in August of 21, and a few months later I found a letter from the Archbishop that had been petitioned for to get approval to put a tabernacle here at the chapel. And when I found that letter, I began in earnest then to follow through on his desires that allows for access to the Eucharist without disrupting any of the prayer. We started probably in about January or February of 22, and the several layers that had to go through in regards to the approval of the concept and then the approval of the design.
Father Peak says the tabernacle was eventually installed this past December, and immediately after it was, someone walked into the chapel and went straight there to pray. And he says it hasn't stopped.
Since then, many individuals have come through, youth groups have come through, college students, the other priests traveling internationally or locally. They have all come to spend their layover time, instead of just sitting at a gate or reading through a book, being actually able to come here and offer Mass, spend time in prayer and adoration. It's been amazing.
And Father Peak says having the real presence of Christ at the Interfaith Chapel at the airport has been a real blessing to him in particular. That's because his late father, who was a pilot, gave him a great love of the Eucharist, and now he's able to share it with others so they might find the same peace and rest in Christ as they pass through the world's busiest airport. We thank you for watching tonight, and remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sabol. Good night, and God bless.